or welcome back. My name is Leah and I'm the Redhead Witch. So today I'm going to be sharing a few thoughts with you about things I wish I knew before I started practicing witchcraft. These thoughts are directly from my Book of Shadows, and one thing that prompted me to reflect on this was I get a lot of questions about beginner tips and what should I do, where do I begin, and I thought this would be a good start into sharing things that I wish I knew beforehand. So grab your tea or coffee and let's get into it. So, since this is kind of one of the first things that I wish I knew before I started, as I'm doing this now, is take notes of everything. Since this is a lifelong journey, it's so valuable to take note of everything that you have read, or as you're reading, and take notes of things that resonate with you and your spiritual beliefs. Also, just to keep records of your personal experience so far. It's a great way to kind of reference back and see, one, how far you've grown, and two, if any of your beliefs have, transformed as you have transformed in your personal experience. When I first started my journey, I did not keep a journal or any sort of record of any education or any research that I had done. So in a way, I feel like I lost a lot of that knowledge when I first started because I just didn't keep any notes or records. I also did not keep any records or notes into spell work because a lot of my spell work is done intuitively. And when I first started, I just kind of, if I felt like I needed to do a working of some sort after meditating, I just would go ahead and research correspondence and trust my gut on it. In some cases that has worked, but when it has worked, I would have no record of exactly what I did. And so since then, I have been much more thoughtful into intuitively spellcrafting, whereas before I just kind of went with the flow. So one of the first things that I wanted to share about what I wish I knew before I started practicing witchcraft is to stay curious. When you're starting your journey and you're researching, it can be super overwhelming, and I think that is a universal feeling among witches and practitioners, is feeling overwhelmed. And because there is so much information now than ever before, I personally feel like now, and other practitioners and witches sharing their knowledge, it's important to stay curious because that's going to help you kind of decide for yourself what resonates and what doesn't. I remember when I first started sharing my practice online, I recognized that there were so many different approaches to different things, deities being one of them. And for a while I thought that my approach was wrong because the way that I view deities is more of a personification of nature. As other practitioners started sharing their views on deity work, I felt like, maybe I'm doing something wrong. But that's when staying curious comes in handy, because instead of feeling guilty or feeling like maybe I've been doing my practice wrong this entire time, staying curious helped to recognize that just because someone is doing something and within their own practice doesn't mean one person is wrong and one person is right. There's just multiple ways and approaches and what resonates with you. Let's see, I also wrote down, so this is, kind of my notes of when I was reflecting. So I kind of shared when I first started my journey and research of witchcraft as a solitary witch, I felt a lot of confusion and uncertainty, as well as almost being silly. I had always been in touch with myself and my spirituality, but when I started to learn about the craft, it really resonated with how I felt. When I started to research and find information that helped me make sense of things, it was important that I stay curious. Once I finished reading a book, I'd already have one lined up, ready to go. It's important to keep an open mind and to form your own thoughts and figure out what aligns with you, and recognize that as you grow, your beliefs will grow too. just staying curious allows you to experience that growth in a natural, in a natural flow. So another thing that really helped me, and what I wish I knew before I started practicing, was taking into consideration my roots. So I write, when I started down the witch path, one thing that really helped guide me was learning about my ancestry. Learning about my ancestry was really a pivotal moment for me to deepen my practice. Once I started to learn about my ancestors and their beliefs and how they celebrated, and what they may have experienced in their life, it started to make sense to me why I was drawn to certain things in my practice. For example, I learned that on my dad's side, we come from a line of farmers, and so it makes a lot of sense why I have a sibling that's a farmer. I have always been interested in herbalism and have always been in tune with nature. And so, like I write in here, it was like unlocking secret family knowledge as I read about my ancestors and how they may have practiced. I knew I had a lot of love of green witchcraft, but when I learned I came from a line of herbalists and farmers, it only solidified that into my practice. So again, if looking into your ancestor line is new for you, I have a video about how to get started on ancestral veneration. I also have a recommendation on a great book in that video on how to get started. Again, I take notes of everything. How you feel when you meditate, any spell work, especially, results or no results, how you felt during that specific spell, and that way for the future reference whether or not that is one that you can use again, one that was successful. So last but not least, the last one that I wrote down, and again I feel like this might be a multi-part video because I feel like since this, there's just so much more that I could add, and I probably will, because this is again just my personal book that I just continue to add as I deepen into my practice. But to spend time on the basics first. So I wrote, rushing into spell work that's more advanced will often result in no results, just because you're still learning about energy work. And now, before I even decide to do any working, I have a set of questions I ask before the decision to move forward. And also, it can be really exciting when we start to learn that the world is our oyster and there's so many workings to get your desired results. It's hard not to want to jump into them at first because it's so exciting, and finally it's like a whole new world being opened up to you. I want to give myself a little bit more credit because I did spend a lot of time establishing a good foundation in my practice before I started to jump into spell work that may be a little more advanced, but and that was just really focusing on grounding myself, cleansing my spaces, protecting myself in my spaces. These are just the necessities of your practice and often go a long way versus other workings. You would be surprised how far a cleansing ritual can go, and most of the time when I thought that I needed a different working, going back to a cleanse and a protection ritual worked just as much as if I was to do a different working. Hot. So those are four things right off the bat of things that I wish I knew before I started practicing. And I know for a fact there is more since I reflected on this. And I will be sure to make a second part to talk about it. If you have any questions or thoughts, please feel free to leave a comment and we can chat more about maybe some things that you wish you knew before you had started practicing that could help someone else. Feel free to ask any questions about other videos that you might find helpful. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your space with me. Be sure to like and subscribe to keep in touch, and I will see you next week.